Welcome back to the Chelsweets kitchen. Today we're making this sheep cake. So Easter is just around the corner and I thought it'd be really fun to make a sheep or a lamb cake. This cake is made with my favorite vanilla layer cake recipe, which the link for that is included in the description below. I'm frosting it with my classic American buttercream, and I actually made this cake both with vanilla layers and a vanilla buttercream. Since this cake is going to be all white, I trimmed off the caramelization from my layers using a serrated knife. This just makes it easier to get a really nice smooth finish and to also not have any of that caramelization poke through the frosting. So one batch of my cake batter makes 4 pretty thick 7-inch cake rounds, which I'm stacking here and frosting using my offset spatula. As you're assembling your layers, you want to make sure that they're really nice and aligned, so I always like to pause midway through and make sure that they're nice and level. I like to add a pretty thick layer of frosting between my cake layers because I have a huge sweet tooth and I love frosting, but this is something you can alter to your taste preference. Once all 4 of the cake layers are stacked, use a serrated knife to trim the edge of your top layer. This is going to make it easier to get a dome-shaped cake, so that way our sheep will have a nice round top to his head. As you're trimming, you want to really take your time and let the knife do all of the work. You don't want to be applying a lot of pressure. You just want to make some gentle motions back and forth until the cake carefully trims away. I like to make a very subtle first pass around the cake while I'm trimming and then taper into a more dramatic shape on my second pass around the cake. So once the top layer is nice and round, I added a crumb coat onto the cake using some of my leftover vanilla buttercream, which I placed into a piping bag just to easily apply it around the cake. If you don't want to waste a piping bag on this step, you can definitely just add it to the cake using an offset spatula. However, using a piping bag does make it easier to get it evenly distributed around the cake. Once the frosting was on, I used a large offset spatula to smooth the frosting around the cake. And as I was doing this, I noticed that the shape of my cake really wasn't that perfect dome that I was after. So once I smoothed the sides, I added a little bit more frosting to the top of the cake, really to achieve that nice, kind of cartoonish shape of the sheep's head. Then to get this crumb coat really smooth, I used a small acetate sheet to kind of drag from the bottom of the cake up to get nice rounded sides. And whenever I'm making a curved or a shaped cake, I love to use acetate sheets. It makes it so easy to smooth and really is the best way to smooth on any kind of sculpted cake. I bought these in a big pack on Amazon that were actually a foot by a foot, so I trimmed them down to a smaller size to make it easier to handle them. Once the crumb coat was nice and smooth, I chilled the cake in the freezer for about 5 minutes, and then I began to work on the sheep's face. So I used some skin tone colored frosting to kind of begin to make the outline of the face, which I then filled in. So you want to make your sheep's face pretty large because you're going to be swirling the wool of the sheep kind of over the face. It's going to overlap. And you want to make sure that the face is big enough to fit all of the fondant facial features that I've made ahead of time. So I like to make the eyes, nose, and mouth a few hours before I decorate a cake so that they're nice and firm, and I can easily place them into the buttercream on my cake. And next comes the really fun part, which is adding on the wool. So I chose to use a French piping tip to do this, which just has some kind of fine lines and it really creates a beautiful swirl. But you could also use a Wilton 1M or whatever frosting tip you have on hand. The key thing to keep in mind is that you make the swirls in the same direction so that the fur has kind of a uniform look. I also made some little ears for our sheep, and I stuck a toothpick into them before they dried so that I could easily add them to the sides of the cake. Seems a little morbid stabbing toothpicks into the side of a sheep's head, but the ears are so cute once they're on. You just have to remember to remove them before giving away these slices to people to eat. And just like that, our sheep cake is complete. Thanks so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed this tutorial, be sure to click the like and subscribe buttons below. And also don't forget to let me know what cakes you'd like to see me make next.